Shema Yasharal, Ahaya Alayanawa, Ahaya Akkad, Shabbat Shalom, Kwam Yasharal. Welcome to Word War 3, Word Wars. Today's reading will be, today's discussion will be about the after death, what happens after you die. A lot of people don't know what happens after death. So we're going to give you a Hebrew Israelite perspective of what happens after death, based according to the Lashawan Kodash, of course, that is the Holy Scriptures. Now, today, let me be quick. What's happening today, there was a disturbance in Washington, D.C. with some Catholic boys, a veteran, a Native American veteran, and some black Hebrew Israelites. Now, those black Hebrew Israelites are basing their preachings against hate and racism, and they're calling upon death. And death, let me remind you, death is the final enemy in the Lashawan Kodash. So they're out there, spreading death and hate, which is something that Hebrew Israelites, actual Hebrew Israelites, should be against. So they're invoking death. And we're going to talk about that today. So one of the first scriptures we want you to go to is we want you to look at the book of Genesis, chapter 15, verse 15. And here, in this verse, again, talking about on the lines of death, when you go, God himself is letting Abraham know that he's going to go unto his fathers in peace. Remember that. And thou shalt be buried in a good old age. That is in the book of Genesis. So God is saying to Abraham, when you die, you're going to go to your fathers, your ancestors. And again, the book of Moses, when Moses, he's speaking, he says, honor your fathers and your mothers. You can't do that as a Christian if you're honoring Abraham, who's not your father, or a Japanese or a Norwegian or some other race of people, and you are honoring someone else's fathers or ancestors. You can't do that. So again, here, God is telling Abraham, when you die, you're going to go and sleep in peace with your fathers, your ancestors. The next verse I'd like to show you guys is in the book of the Kings. And David is telling his son Solomon what he needs to do to maintain peace. In first book of Kings, chapter 2, verse 2, he says that he's going the way of all the earth, meaning he's going to die. Everything on earth, every person on earth is going to die someday. When we jump down to verse 10, he's literally saying that, the book is saying, so David slept with his fathers. He didn't sleep with any other ancestors or any other people. He slept with his fathers, literally. And they buried him in the city of David. So he's sleeping, but with his fathers in the afterlife. And some people, some of you may not get that, thinking, okay, he's dead and he's lying there physically with, the dead people that he's related with. But we're going to keep going so that you guys can see that death, the physical death, is that body that goes back to the earth and it turns back into the soil that it came from. And that breath of life goes, what we're talking about, goes to the fathers. Again, honoring your fathers and your mothers, which is one of the commandments. Some people call it the fourth commandment. Now we're going to go over into this New Testament. Now the New Testament, when we go here, we're going to go into the book of Matthew. And this is probably a quick sidebar from the information, but we're going to go into the book of Matthew and I'm going to show you. Oh, that's Luke. Okay, well, I'm going to show you in Mark. Before we go to Luke, let's go to Mark. If I could get to it. Come on, Mark, where you at? Mark, I know you're here, dude. Or Salakia, excuse me. We'll go to Matthew. Much better. Matthew's much better. And here's a verse in here, chapter 22. Here's a Mark, again, St. Matthew, chapter 22, and verse 30. Is that it? Wait, is this page? Oh, these pages are so close together. I should have put a marker in here. Okay, here we go. Chapter 22. Okay, here we go. 30. Okay. For in the resurrection, and again, this is the Messiah speaking, folks. This is the Messiah speaking to the disciples. For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but as the angels of God in heaven. So he's talking to them about some woman who was married and had no children, and she was married to probably 7 husbands, and they had no children, and so they died. And the disciples were asking the Messiah, "Hey, so whose wife is she's gonna be in heaven?" And he said, "Well, Jesus is the Messiah, saying, well, in heaven, in the resurrection, there is no marriage, but they're gonna be like the angels of God." You know, so your ancestors who have passed on are like angels of God. And I remember one of Jonathan's sons, one of the descendants of Saul, was telling King David, "Hey, you are like the angel of God." I don't remember the verse specifically, but I remember reading that. He was calling King David, "You are like the angel of God," because he was dealing with righteousness. Here we go. Even to go back to that, so to go back to that, King David was actually in that same chapter as well. King David was actually looking at a Gileadite and a Benjamite. And he was saying all the good things that this guy, the Gileadite, did that helped King David get over his troubles with his family. And then the Benjamite, he was telling his son Solomon to remember what these two guys did. Even General Joab, like they did bad things. So King David was trying to correct the wrongs to make them right before he died, so he could live in peace in the afterlife. Remember that. Now here we are in the New Testament, and we're going to go to Luke, and then this is about the rich man and Lazarus. And the rich man and Lazarus here, again, one of the parables of the Messiah, he's saying that and it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels. And who are these angels, folks? Ancestors. Into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And this is Luke chapter 16, verse 22. And we're going to go down to 24 now. And he cried and said, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me." He cried and he said, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me." And Abraham, verse 25, Abraham said, "Son, remember that thou in your lifetime you received good things, and likewise Lazarus received evil things. But now he is comforted, and you are tormented." So if you're here in this lifetime, and you believe any one thing in the words of this book, the Lashawan Kodash, which most people call the Holy Bible, it's got to be holy, folks. You got to keep it holy. And if you're out there doing bad, doing wrong, screaming death culture against people, it's wrong. You know, wearing a "Make America Great Again" when America was evil to my people in the past, it's wrong. It's wrong. But Abraham said, "Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime received your good things, and also Lazarus received evil things." And this guy didn't make it right. So what he tried to do? What did the rich man try to do? He tried to make it good for his brothers that were still alive. So when we jump down, we're going to jump down to verse 31. And he said unto him, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, meaning if they did not listen to the laws of Moses and the prophecies of their ancestors, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. Again, the Messiah speaking. The Messiah speaking. This is the Messiah speaking. This is a parable of the Messiah. He said unto him, if this is Father Abraham speaking to his descendant, the rich man. He said unto him, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. Y'all getting that? We got some more verses back here for y'all to consider. We're going to go to the book of Romans. Now, these Romans, a lot of people believe that Paul is specifically writing to the Roman people. No, he is writing to the Jews that are in Rome, because there was no Roman people even considering Jewish, which is wrong, the history of the Hebrews in Rome at that time. They were actually getting kicked out. So Paul is actually writing to the Hebrew Israelites that were living in Rome as Roman citizens. And we're going to come to chapter 6, verse 4, which says, therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as the Messiah was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father. Y'all get that? We are buried with him by baptism into the death. You can only be buried with your fathers. You're going to be received by your fathers. You're going to be received by your ancestors on the other side. You're not going to be received, if you're Japanese, you're not going to be received by a Norwegian. You know, you're going to be received by your ancestors. Speak peace to the people. This is what this is about. This is your Hebrew Israelite awakening. Has nothing to do with racism, folks. This has everything to do with perfection of the Holy Scriptures, which was given to us by human trafficking, murdering, lying thieves. Here's a correction. Here's another verse back here. Again, to the Colossians, chapter 2, verse 12. The Colossians, the Hebrews who were in Colossae, scattered abroad. Paul is writing to them, and he's saying, again, chapter 2, verse 12, buried with him in baptism, where you were also risen with him through faith of the operation of God, who hath raised him from the dead. And again, the Messiah went to the Father, his Father. Just like you'll be going to your Father when you die. And whatever your fathers did in the past, that's what you're going to be going to. You're going to go to that. Abraham's bosom was a bosom of peace. Now, whatever your fathers were, if you don't make peace while you're alive, you're going to be going to whatever your father's done. And the books will be open. This last verse here, I want to make this quick because it's cold out here. The first epistle of Peter. And Peter, he is an apostle of the Messiah. And he's talking to the strangers that are scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, Bithynia, all of these people who are scattered in these regions, he's calling them strangers. So if they're strangers over there, then they may be there's certainly Hebrew Israelites in the land of Judea if they're strangers over there. Again, so these are Hebrew Israelites that the the first epistle of Peter is talking about, who are the elect. Verse 2, he's saying the elect according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, which is in the Old Testament. God the Father was talking about Hebrew Israelites the entire time in the whole Old Testament, and Peter is talking about Hebrew Israelites in this New Testament. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord, the Messiah, the kinsman redeemer of your faith. Now, you other nations, if y'all not making peace, then you're making destruction. And you're going to go to your fathers, and you're going to see the same thing that the rich man seen. And there's some of you out there who's looking at this, who have had experienced life after death, had a death experience, have seen black people, what you call black people, and you know that they're there. But I'm going to end this right now and remind you guys that, again, this is not a racist group. This is your Hebrew Israelite awakening, and I'm your conscientious objector. Hebrew Israelite out.